One thing I've more and more come to believe is a kind of materialist view of ideology, which is that as much as we might pretend to ourselves that ideas and governing paradigms come out of some free discussion and debate of ideas, that actually when we dig down into it we find that much more the reality is that whatever happens to be the governing ideas of a certain time period tend to be what benefit the ruling elite and what benefit the given material relations of that time. And admittedly, this is a kind of almost Marxist way of interpreting things, though I reject that. But what it does show is that to really get to the nub of an issue and to a debate that's going on, whatever that is politically, you have to understand the elite that is controlling and pushing the narrative. And so far, I've only really applied that to political ideologies, but really it goes much deeper in that. In a previous video I talked about this clockwork view of the universe that has dominated our understanding of reality since the Enlightenment. And the interesting thing is that if you really dig down into it, that too can be seen as a reflection of material relations. In other words, it's no coincidence that all of a sudden you had English empiricists formulating arguments for private property, because something like private property as an institution was necessary for the growth of capitalism at that time, and so it was necessary that philosophy and our beliefs came to mirror that and conform to that in a beneficial way. But this goes right down to our understanding of metaphysics and ontology, in that historically people have always had a kind of organic view of reality where nature, the universe, the world are seen as a kind of a holistic living organism or an emanation of a higher intelligence, and in some sense kind of organically unified, whether that's the Tao of Taoism and Zen, or the one of Neoplatonism. Even in the Renaissance you get the very popular belief that the world is basically an organism. And of course what you have in the 17th century is this new view of the universe, what I call the clockwork view of the universe. But really the better description of it is the mechanistic view of the world, where the world becomes a machine. And this coincides with the explosion of industrial capitalism. And the growth of industrial capitalism is really contingent on, and can almost be defined down to, the exploitation of non-renewable fossil fuels that we have to dig out of or extract from the ground, rather than the medieval way of producing energy, which was from things like the sun, or from animals, or from human strength. And with this growth in the exploitation of fossil fuels and non-renewable resources, and with the development of machines of all kinds, with this came the mechanistic view of the world that turned the world into what Heidegger calls the standing reserve of nature, which is where nature comes to be seen as a standing reserve of resources. It's looked at as the world in Minecraft is looked at something to be exploited for our benefit. And so what's interesting to me is that the mechanistic view of the 17th century, if you kind of pin it down to its central axioms, conforms very well to the understanding of the machine that we were developing at that time, and broken it down to basically 4 or 5 essential points that you can boil down this view of the world down to, that completely conforms to the machine itself, which is that, you know, machines are made of parts. They give particular information about the world. They're based on order and regularity and predictability. You can perform operations with them in some kind of ordered sequence. They operate in a limited, precisely defined domain. There's no concept of a whole. You need to necessarily abstract it into one very specialized domain. And most importantly of all, they give us power over nature. And it's this power over nature that in turn informs the mechanical view of reality. And think about it again in terms of the understanding of the machine. In the 17th century, the understanding of nature becomes that one, it is made up of atomic parts. It consists of discrete bits of information that are extracted from the world. It's assumed to operate according to laws and rules. And again, the key point here is predictability. Much like the machine, you can predict a sequence based on past events. It's based on a context-free abstraction from the changing complex world of appearance. And so much like the machine operates in a precisely defined domain that's abstracted from any whole, in this mechanistic view of reality, things like atoms and particles are given a reality independent of the whole, and so they're given a context-free reality independent of process. And finally, in this way of looking at things, nature is defined in such a way as to give us maximum capability for manipulation and control over nature. And ultimately, again to go back to Heidegger, this worldview is an expression of humanity's recognition of power over nature and the enforcement of that power. Much like the machine gives us power over nature, this mechanistic worldview itself, which is the understanding of the machine turned to nature, gives us power and dominion over nature in a wholly exploitative way. And so, as much as we can talk about political realities and individual alienation in the world, it's the great minds like Heidegger and Jacques Ellul that recognize that ultimately this is a much deeper rot that has gotten to the core of our very approach to the world and the things we presuppose when we approach the world. And ultimately these have their roots in material relations that have come to form a kind of independence outside of ourselves, to the point that we seem not to be able to interfere with this material reality, which in turn is creating whatever ideological structure is necessary. And I think the mechanistic view of the 17th century and the destruction of the organic worldview is the finest example of how dangerous and destructive this process is, and how kind of powerless we are in the face of it.